And I think the difference between this team and Missouri is Missouri gets the Luther Burden types and keeps them, signs the Williams Nwaneri types. We're going to talk Kentucky because I look at Kentucky and I think, you know what? Kentucky's going to be a pretty good team this year.
Right.
They got Brock Vandagriff transferred from Georgia to start at quarterback. They got Gerald Mincey transferred from Tennessee, start at tackle. They got Jamon Dumas-Johnson transferred from Georgia to start at linebacker.
Yes. Yep.
Here's the thing. They're going to lose those teams. Like, that's the problem.
Yep.
They're going to beat the teams they're supposed to beat probably, but they're not quite good enough to beat those other ones.
Yes. River, could you do me a favor and throw that schedule up for me, please? Because I think you look at this schedule, Andy, tell me if I'm wrong. They could go defeated on the road this year.
They could.
There's
a world Miss, at Florida, at Tennessee, at Texas. At Florida is the easiest, but the other ones are, ooh, boy.
That is a brutal slate. Like, I think there's a world in which this team can, like, pretty comfortably lose 5 games this year. And I say comfortably lose in the sense where you look at the matchup and you're like, well, they weren't supposed to win that one. And I think there's 5 games on this schedule where you say that. This team could go 500, Andy. I think that's very realistic.
That's my floor. Now, here's the thing. When Mark Stoops was hired, the idea of 6-6 being the floor at Kentucky was tremendous. Like, that's what we're hiring you for. That's the whole point of this thing.
Yep.
The ceiling of this team is 9-3. When Mark Stoops was hired, the idea of a Kentucky team going 9-3, that's amazing.
Unheard of. Absolutely.
But now Mark Stoops gets paid as much as the best coaches in the SEC. Well, no, Kirby Smart's making $13 million now, so we'll take him out of the equation. Mark Stoops is paid as well as everybody else. He's paid as well as Lane Kiffin. He's paid as well. Like, he was courted by Texas A&M. Their regents revolted. Yep. He ends up staying at Kentucky. But this is the blessing and the curse of Mark Stoops. Your floor is so much higher than it's ever been.
Yep.
But he has not raised your ceiling as much as, say, Eli Drinkwitz has raised Missouri's or Lane Kiffin has raised Ole Miss's.
Right. I like to use the analogy of that some teams use when they talk about power running backs, right? You need 4 yards, they'll get you 4 yards. You need 5 yards, they'll get you 4 yards. So they're sort of living in this world of purgatory that I don't know if they're ever going to be able to escape. And yes, they bring in someone like Brock Vandagriff, but even if he's clicking at all cylinders, I don't know if I see a team that wins more than 10 games. And if that's the case, they would be scratching and clawing for a playoff berth. But even then, if they get in the playoff, Andy, I don't see a team that can realistically make a run at a national title, let alone an SEC championship.
That's fine. Look, if Kentucky can make the playoff,
they're
throw a damn party. Like, that's fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, but it's just like anything else. South Carolina is a good example of this. They were so bad for so long, lost to Clemson so much. Steve Spurrier comes in. They have a 5-game winning streak against Clemson. They win 11 games 3 years in a row, and all of a sudden they start thinking they're a national power and forget they're South Carolina. Yeah. And then when they have to go back to being South Carolina, you just can't handle it. So the question, I feel like Kentucky fans have been they've been level-headed about this. They've not turned into those crazy everything has to move toward a national championship fan. Like they've been realistic. But at what point do they start to say, all right, where's the next step?
Yep. Andy, I'll ask you, we talk about the floor and the ceiling, right? It's pretty wide for them. Tell me if I'm wrong. Do you see them steering more towards the floor than the ceiling this year? Do you think?
I think they wind up right in the middle, 8-4 or 7-5. Like, because that's the thing. Mark Stoops is a good coach. He's a solid, steady coach who has brought in solid, steady, good players. Like, they're well coached. They will have one game where they get completely outclassed, probably like Georgia. They'll also have a game where they play perfectly and outclass somebody else, like the Florida game last year. And so you're going to have those. And so that makes like Kentucky Auburn very interesting. It also makes Kentucky South Carolina very interesting. Like, September 7th, South Carolina Kentucky game in Lexington is a massive vibes game. Like,
right. Absolutely. I was going to say
fan base. that loses
Go
that
ahead.
is like, oh God.
Oh, right. Yeah, I will say I feel bad for the Lexington folks only because their road games are so good this year. So I really feel bad for the fans that have to stay for the home slate, but I sure hope they get a good
It whips
crop
back
that
around in
head
25.
to
They're
the
going to be
road.
fine.
True.
All right. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.